Welcome to Hanging in My Tree with Lewis Otto Lange and Jean Ella Scott Henderson. Lewis and Jean were a real power couple. They started a flourishing business, Langco, in their garage. Together with their son John, they ran a number of successful companies and accumulated significant property and wealth. They lived through 2 world wars and their only son John died before them. When Lewis first dabbled in the business world in the 1920s, his father Henry's world was very publicly crumbling around him. In 1920, his father was embroiled in an affair with a married woman. He was discovered by a private investigator in the bedroom with a lady. His mother sought a divorce from his father. His father was facing a manslaughter charge for the death of a young child in a motor vehicle accident. His father then married the woman who he had been having an affair with and had a child with her in the same year that Lewis's own son was born. Despite all of the public turmoil and humiliation that Lewis must have been feeling, Lewis and Jean rose from the ashes to great success. Lewis was born in 1898 in Footscray, Victoria. He was the son of Isabella Grace Florence and Henry Christopher Peter Lange. Check out part 1 of Henry's video to find out a little bit more about Lewis's childhood. His elder brother Cecil Henry Lange also has a video in Hanging in My Tree. His sister Vera Grace Lange died before he was born. In 1902, Jean Ella Scott Henderson was born in Moss Vale, New South Wales, to Robert Henderson and Georgina Henderson, maiden name Sefton. As is often the case in ancestry and historical records, there is a lot more information available about Lewis than there is about Jean. Lewis and his family lived in Footscray, Victoria, Australia until about 1901 when the family moved to New South Wales. First to Marrickville, then by 1911 they lived in Thirroul, New South Wales. In 1912 he went on a 2,000-mile road trip with his mum and dad around New South Wales and Victoria that was recorded in the newspaper. In 1914, the Illawarra Mercury reported that Lewis received his qualifying certificate from high school in Thirroul. This was the same year that World War I had commenced. In 1922, Lewis was one of the first 3 directors of the Commonwealth Telegraph Supplies Limited, whose objects were to manufacture electrical contrivances and deal with telephone and telegraph supplies, with a reported capital of £5,000. Lewis married Jean Ella Scott Henderson in 1923. The wedding was held at the Glebe Presbyterian Church. A newspaper article noted that the church was prettily decorated with palms, lilies and pink roses for the wedding of Jean Henderson and Lewis Lange, both of Glebe Point. Local Girl Guides formed a guard of honour at the entrance to the church. Jean wore a classically cut white gown trimmed with silver flowers. Her veil was richly embroidered tulle, caught with a coronet of orange blossoms. She had a bouquet of orchids and lilies of the valley. The bridesmaid was gowned in coral pink with a pink veil encircled with silver leaves. A reception was held afterwards at Marlborough, and later Jean and Lou left for the Blue Mountains, with Jean travelling in a smart grey frock and black poke bonnet. In 1924, their son John Lewis Lange was born. In the same year, 1924, Lewis's half-sister Nancy Charlotte Lange was born to his father and his new wife Charlotte Parker Todd. By 1928, the couple were living at 6 Pine Avenue 5 Dock, the home that they stayed in for almost 40 years. In 1929, the newspaper reported that cracksmen blew open a safe in the office of the Commonwealth Telegraph Supply Company. It was reported that nothing of value was taken. We know a little bit about how the safe was blown, as another business in the area had a length of fuse found in the lock of the safe. In 1930, the couple's home address at the corner of Pine and Lee Avenue 5 Dock was the registered address of the new company Langco, an electrical and mechanical appliance manufacturer and contractor. The garage shown in this photo may have been where the company started. In 1932, Jean's father, Robert Henderson, died. Also in 1932, Jean was reported to be undertaking home duties and Lewis was an engineer. In 1933, there was a serious accident at the Commonwealth Telegraph Supplies Limited factory at Leichhardt, where an iron worker had his right arm wrenched out when he was caught between the belt and the pulley of a machine. Family members have reported to me that Lewis used to do boys' trip cruises with his brother, Cecil, mainly to Asia. Their favourite place was Penang, the jewel of the Orient. I have some souvenirs from what I can only assume is a cruise that my great-grandfather Cecil and Lewis did from Sydney to Norfolk Island and Noumea. I have the original tourist brochure for Norfolk Island, which explains you can see the golden beaches and aquamarine lagoons, that the romance of the island is enhanced by it being the home of the descendants of the Bounty mutineers. Horses are readily hired. There are 2 golf courses and deep-sea fishing. Spirituous liquors can be obtained. It appears that Lewis and Cecil travelled from Darling Harbour on the 23rd of June 1934. Also kept as a souvenir is the M.V. Wangala entertainment sheet for the 29th of June 1934, which included cinema entertainment, shindig, Piers of Darwin and Love Lies, and dancing till 11 p.m. Dinner included boiled Canadian halibut with shrimp sauce, roast hindquarter of lamb, and coffee served in the smoking room and lounge. The cruise was due to return to Sydney on 30 June 1934. In 1936 and 1935, the employment of juvenile labour in preference to adults was the subject of disputes at the Commonwealth Telegraph Supplies at Leichhardt, Sydney. In 1939, World War II had begun. In 1942, John, Jean and Lewis's son, was employed as an apprentice at Langco Electrical Jug Factory in fitting and turning or tool making. In 1944, Langco applied for a trademark for toasters, irons, jugs, percolators, lighting equipment, radiators, grillers, stoves, and water heaters. It was registered from September 1944. In 1944, Langco requested the release of A. Lange, a fitter and turner from the New South Wales Railways, to join the Langco firm. I've requested a copy of this document from the National Archives of Australia. A. Lange would most likely have been Alan Frederick Lange, who was the nephew of Lewis. We know that he was a fitter and turner from the electoral rolls, and in 1946 he was residing with his parents at 22 Saxon Street, Campsie. The Government Gazette showed that Langco was providing various items to the Department of Supply and Shipping. An interesting find was a notice in the Government Gazette that pursuant to the National Security Prices Regulations, there were fixed maximum prices for a number of Langco products, including the electric jug, domestic iron, radiator, toasters, and storage water heaters. The National Security Prices Regulations of 1945 were established to control the price of goods and services in times of national emergency. They were part of a broader plan by the Commonwealth Government to ensure the availability of essentials and to prevent price gouging. Also included in the security price regulations were things like car tyres and fortifying spirits. By 1946, their son, John Lewis, was included in the electoral roll at the couple's address at 6 Pine Avenue, 5 Dock, and he was recorded as a manager. In 1946, there was also an advertisement in the Australian Woman's Weekly of some of Langco's products. In 1946, a number of the Langco companies were struck off the register and the companies were dissolved, including Langco Electrics Proprietary Limited, Langco Sales Proprietary Limited, Langco Stoves, Langco Water Heaters. In September 1946, Langco Water Heaters Proprietary Limited was created by Lewis, Jean and John. In March 1947, Lewis was named as understating his income in a questionable tax return from the tax years 1935 to 1936 all the way to 1943-1944 tax returns in the amounts of £12,755 and £3,037. In 1947, Lewis, Jean and John Lange established Langco Stoves Proprietary Limited to manufacture and deal in electrical, gas, chemical, oil, mechanical and other types of engines, machines, heaters, boilers and coolers. On 8 January 1949, Jean's mother Georgina died as a widow at Royal Prince Alfred Hospital. On 5 May 1949, Lewis's mother, Grace Florence, passed away. Grace had been living with Lewis and Jean and was recorded as residing with them in the 1949 electoral rolls. John was no longer living at the home at the time. In November 1950, there is an article in Column 8. Column 8 is a column that used to appear on the front page of the Sydney Morning Herald, where readers could send in their observations and interesting happenings. The content is usually quirky. The article said, "Yesterday, Mr. Minchin, a hardware merchant, dialed Langco Industries about the wattage of a sink heater. He got the wrong number, but found that Mrs. Lange, the wife of the principal of the firm he was seeking, was there. They put her on the phone and she told him what he wanted to know." On 20 August 1951, Lewis's father, Henry Peter Christopher Lange, died. In 1951, Lewis bought lots in Bona Vista Estate, Elizabeth Street, Rozelle. Lewis and John applied for a patent for improvements in or related to the control means for supplying electric current to vessels for heating liquids. The patent was accepted on the 20th of June 1955. The patent tells us a few things about Lewis and John. Lewis was still living at 6 Pine Avenue 5 Dock, and he was a mechanical engineer. John was living at 266 Burns Bay Road, Langco. He was an electrical engineer. There is a picture of their patent design. A quirky story was reported in 1953 where 5 minutes after a woman walked out of her cottage in Rozelle, a wall from the Langco factory crashed onto her home, wrecking 2 rooms. No one was injured, but the resident, Miss Isles, who witnessed the accident, suffered shock. A wind gust carried away a section of a wall about 20 yards by 15 feet high and showered a ton of bricks and masonry through the roof of her 4-roomed weatherboard cottage. The rear of the cottage was crushed and a balcony, kitchen, dining room were wrecked. Nearby residents said the wall from the Langco factory had only just been completed several days before. Original Langco products are now collectibles and found in museums. At one stage, almost every home in Australia had an automatic Langco kettle. By 1963, Lewis and Jean had moved to 41 Telegraph Road, Pymble. Their son, John, and his wife, Vera, lived at 15A Lennox Street. Lewis and Jean's occupation is recorded as a manufacturer in the electoral records that year. In 1964, Lewis, Jean and John, as well as Francis Larkin, bought property in Crown Street, Wollongong, and a number of lots on the Bona Vista estate, including 1820 Elizabeth Street, Rozelle. In 1964, Langco Electric Proprietary Limited, Langco Sales Proprietary Limited, Langco Stoves Proprietary Limited, and Langco Water Heater Proprietary Limited were dissolved. In 1966, Langco bought property at Rozelle, including 34 Elizabeth Street, Rozelle. In 1975, we know that Langco Industries had some government contracts, including with the Department of Defence to provide hot water urns to the Navy, propellers to the Department of Consumer Affairs. At some stage, and I don't know when, Langco Proprietary Limited sold to Zip Heaters Australia Proprietary Limited, who still run the business. Lewis and Jean had a holiday home at 44 Ocean Road, Palm Beach. The home is currently apparently a 7-bedroom, 5-bathroom house with 2 car spaces. It has a current estimated value of over $15 million. Lewis and Jean's only son, John, predeceased both his parents in Gordon, New South Wales. This was in 1983 and he was only aged 59 years. Lewis died just 2 years later on 8 September 1985 at 86 years of age at Pymble. Probate was granted on the 6th of March 1986. Jean passed away on 25 September 1996 at Hornsby Hospital, aged 94 years. Thank you for watching this episode of Hanging My Tree. There are many more videos about the family at the YouTube channel Hanging in My Tree. This video has been created for family history purposes. It contains documents from the internet, direct quotes, and photographs